The following takes place between March 17 and March 21 in the year 2014. Events occur in real time. Hello, St. Elmo's Fire. So it's spring break this week, and instead of going to the beach like everybody else, I've decided to head down to Detroit to see my old college roommate Jess. On the way to Detroit, I'm going to hit up a couple of Midwestern cities, including Chicago and Indianapolis. So let's go see what they look like. My first stop in Chicago was the independent bookstore, The Bookseller. The cozy environment and the handwritten staff reviews created a welcoming atmosphere as I browsed through their selection of books. I even had some tea while I skimmed my purchases, including a signed copy of Paper Towns by John Green. Fun fact, The Bookseller is John's first love when it comes to bookstores, and it's the only place where you're guaranteed to find a signed copy of his books. Order info in the doobly-doo. Afterwards, I joined the traffic heading to downtown Chicago, where I saw a billboard for the movie Divergent, Erudite Headquarters, and the Ferris wheel that has a special role in Veronica Roth's novel about a dystopian Chicago. Seriously, if you haven't read Divergent yet, you're missing out. After a quick lunch at Giordano's for some authentic Chicagoan deep dish pizza, I headed to the Field Museum. There were lions and tigers and dinosaurs. Oh my. You could watch scientists analyze DNA in one part of the museum, and in another you could watch them prepare fossils. I even saw Emily Graslie from The Brain Scoop. On TV, anyway. After the museum, I took a walk through Millennium Park and ended up at the Chicago River, which had been dyed green for St. Patrick's Day. Woo! Ireland and stuff. On Tuesday, I drove down to Indianapolis to visit my cousin Mike. As soon as I arrived, this happened. I need to get some gas. Where in Indianapolis can I get gas?
Turn right on West 86th Street.
Good idea, GPS. If you haven't guessed already, I'm at the Speedway gas station at 86th and Ditch. If you've read The Fault in Our Stars, you'll know that this location is of significance to the book. I won't spoil it for the rest of you, but just know that it's the place where Augustus and Hazel... There, that wasn't spoilery at all, was it? Since I was in Indianapolis, I had to visit the Museum of Art. I started outside, which had some really cool art you could play on. I even got to see Free Basket, where I pretended to shoot some existentially fraught free throws like Augustus Waters in The Fault in Our Stars. I basically geeked out when I stumbled upon the Funky Bones, also highlighted in John Green's book. If you couldn't tell, I'm kind of a huge supporter of John's work. And just like the characters in John's book, I hopped from one bone to the next, and even made the leap from the ribcage to the skull. If you ever get the chance to jump on the Funky Bones, you should totally do it. Eventually, I made it into the museum and headed straight to the top floor, exclusively for contemporary art. In the few art museums I visited, I've always breezed through the contemporary stuff in favor of the older works, but this time, I made a point of focusing on the contemporary. I'm really glad I did, because I gained a whole new appreciation for modern art. Here, you are actually encouraged to interact with the art, to hear and touch as well as see. When the museum closed, I was still working my way through the contemporary art floor, unable to tear myself away from these works of beauty. The next morning, Mike took me on a tour of Marian University, where he's a first-year med student. Marian is a Franciscan school, which made sense as you could see crosses virtually everywhere.
This is the chapel here at the College of Osteopathic Medicine. Now, what is really cool about this building is when the building was put up, it was in a neighborhood that was filled with a lot of chestnut trees. And a lot of people were kind of unhappy that all the chestnut trees were chopped down. And so what the school did is that they took those chestnut trees, they turned them into the chairs, the siding, the walls, Stations of the Cross, the altar, and the stand that the tabernacle was on.
Mike described Indiana as the northern state that wants to be south, and so naturally I ended up here. Mike, what am I doing here?
You're going to be shooting a gun.
Oh God. Yes, I learned about guns. How to load one, fire one, and how to be safe about it. I'm still surprised by how much I liked it. I suppose it helps that I was channeling my inner Jack Bauer. After a quick lunch and tour of downtown, I continued on my long drive to Detroit. I'd be lying if I said that the drive never got boring, but once I arrived at Jess's house, her 3 cats were enough to erase the endless hours of driving from my mind. Thursday was all about exploring the Detroit area. First, Jess took me to the Cranbrook Educational Community, where I learned about the history of this arts and science community. I also got to see some sculptures and fountains, and even in the snow they looked magnificent. Like Elsa from Frozen. Let it go, let it go. Alright, I'll stop. We also visited the Historical Museum, and I enjoyed learning about how the Motor City evolved over the years. Innovators, architects, musicians, and cars, yes, cars, all contributed to the culture of Detroit. We then headed downtown to check out Hart Plaza, full of sculptures and memorials highlighting Detroit's role in the Underground Railroad. It's right by the Detroit River, where we were just a stone's throw away from Canada. Windsor, actually, but yeah, Canada. That evening we took a tour of the Fisher Building, known as Detroit's largest art object. With a tour of 200 people, it was hard to hear the tour guide at times, but regardless, I was fascinated by all the marble and detail that went into this Art Deco building. We even took a crowded elevator to the 26th floor, where you could see the city lights at night. Super cool. On Friday, Jess's fiancé Dan joined us in our journey across the Ambassador Bridge, which would take us into Windsor, Canada. On the shoreline of Windsor was a sculpture park, which was fun to walk through. Look, I found somebody that I'm taller than. We also got a pretty sweet view of the Detroit skyline. After exploring a bit of Windsor, we headed back to the Ambassador Bridge, where we were cautiously allowed back into Detroit. Insert American border joke here. Then, it was time for me to head home. I had a lot of time to reflect on the last week as I drove back to Wisconsin. I thought about the mosaics that lined the walls of the Fisher Building. I thought about the art I saw in Indianapolis, which invited interaction and engagement of the senses. I thought about the shoe exhibit at the Field Museum, which showcased shoes from all over the world across different eras. That got me thinking about the miracle of human consciousness. We have the capacity to construct towers that perforate the sky, create art that encourages us to look within ourselves, and explore the world around us through science and discovery. As people, we're constantly changing and evolving, and it's fascinating to see that growth manifested in our innovations, creations, and discoveries. Even a little road trip around the Midwest can open your eyes to see the world in different ways, and therein lies an opportunity for personal growth.